This is James Lupton. Welcome back to another episode of the Fighter Podcast. Today's episode, I am joined with Johnathon Banks, and the episode will be about Emanuel Steward, the great legendary trainer. Johnathon, first of all, tell us about how you first met Emanuel.
I first met Emanuel in 1996. Um, the next part may be hard to believe, but he wanted to know who was the 147 pounder who won the Golden Gloves, and that was me. And that was my first initial introduction to him. I haven't met him. I mean, obviously everybody's seen him around, but I haven't met him since then. And I wasn't a part of the Kronk stable at the time. It wasn't until maybe 2 years later when I joined his amateur program at the Kronk Gym.
At that point in '96, when he's first looking for yourself and trying to find out who you were, did you know about Emmanuel and did you know how great he was or was going to be?
I knew all about him. I mean, I listen. I've studied boxing. I was studying boxing more than my homework because that's all I wanted to do, and I couldn't wait to get started. 14 is when I got started, and I was only in there for like 4 months. And when my then trainer asked me, "Do I want to fight the Detroit Golden Gloves?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like there's no question. So I knew who Emmanuel was. I knew who Tommy Hearns was. I knew about the Kronk Gym, and at that time I just never been. And had I known that it was only 6 blocks away from where I was always at, right on the side, it's West Side really. They call it Southwest, but it's West Side on Love and Horatio is where I was at, and it was only 6 blocks away. I had no idea, But I started all the way on the East Side, all the way on the East Side at Brewster Center, and that's the gym Emmanuel started boxing at. That's the gym Joe Louis trained at. That's the gym Sugar Ray Robinson trained at. So I'm actually happy that it started there because it's just, I don't know, it's one of them legacy things that I was able to train at the same place those legends was able to train at.
Absolutely. Talk to me about joining the Kronk when you eventually got there a few years later. What was that like? Everyone talks of the Kronk as having the monster mentality, and it's an absolute. You got to be a dog in there. You got to go in there. And you got to fight for your right to be there. Was it like that in the amateur program? Or was it?
Well, um, I already knew a lot of people down there because my then trainer used to take me down there for sparring. So I already knew, like 14, 15 years old, I'm down there sparring. So I already knew a lot of the people down there because I seen some of the young guys in tournaments. So it's not like I didn't know them, but the first thing they asked my trainer is, where was I from? And I'm from Southwest Detroit. And he told him I was from the East Side because he didn't tell him I was from the East Side, they won't gonna let me box down there. I mean, because all the champions from the East Side, everybody who knew how to fight was East Side. Everybody's from the East Side, and they're like, man, you can't fight if you're from the West Side. You probably can't fight. So no, don't put him in there. It was years later, after I had joined them when they found out that I was West Side. So they didn't, they were surprised, but it was crazy thinking about it. It was nuts, man, but. It couldn't have been a better introduction to boxing for anybody because when you walk in, you hear the noise, the gym is hot, the gym is crowded, you walking past world champions, you walking past top contenders, and you had to be serious if you step in the ring. Like not even just you got to be serious to step in the ring to fight. In the actual fight, but you got to be just as serious to step in that ring in the Kronk Gym. My first sparring actually in the Kronk Gym was Tommy Hearns. Tommy was light heavyweight at the time, or cruiserweight, I believe, and he just wanted some light work. He only used his jab, and 14, 15-year-old kid, I'm in there. All I know is how to box one way. and that's to shoot at whoever I'm in there with. And that's what I did. And he started popping me with his jab. And I went home with a black eye. My mama wanted to put ice on it. I said, please don't touch it. Tommy Hearns gave me this black eye. I said, I'm gonna ride this thing till the hill on its own. It was a moment for me, man, because like I remember watching looking at this guy fight world titles, man. Tommy was always, to me, he was always a legend. So it was, for me, it was an honor just to share the ring with him.
Absolutely, and what an experience that is, for, like I say, for a teenage boy who's a boxing fanatic. Talk to me about Emmanuel and his training methods.
My training methods is different, similar to a lot of people, because it's boxing. You can't have too many different methods, or else it wouldn't work. But I remember I was in the ring sparring, and Emmanuel, at this point, he never gave me any instructions in the corner, because I wasn't. I was a part of the amateur program, but like we wasn't, like, he was always traveling because he's dealing with the pros more than anything. And he was down there one day. I was down there sparring. He came to the corner. He said, "Come here, come over here." He told me, he said, "I see you throwing the right hand. You look like you got a pretty good right hand. This is what I want you to do." He said, "Put the right hand in front of your mouth and shoot it from there." And I did it, and I hurt the guy. And it was just, it was that goes to his methods. He changes the game. He changes your performance when he in the corner. It was an unreal situation. And it always reminded me, like, I was in a fight, and Emmanuel was throwing the benefit, and he put me as the main event. And I was going into I believe, the sixth round. And Emmanuel came to the corner. He said, "Listen, Jonathan, like, I don't understand this. This is all I want you to do. The kid not counterpunching. When you double jab and he backed up, shoot a straight right hand down the middle." And I did it. The dude fell flat on his face, and it was insane. That's Emmanuel. Emmanuel see things before most people see it, or maybe anybody, and he tell you the instructions, and if you follow it, usually you're successful.
You mentioned he sees things before anyone else may even ever see it at all. Just how special is that?
I mean, it's super special, because you want, like, a fighter wants someone in the corner to assess the situation before his opponent's corner can assess the situation. You don't everything you say, you don't want your opponent's corner to say the same thing to counter what you're doing. So it's almost like you got a leg up on your opponent, because you got somebody in this. You got that second eye watching out, telling you and instructing you on exactly what to do to defeat your opponent.
What's he like in between rounds in a fight scenario? The lights are on, the crowd are screaming your name, and you got that potentially that pressure on you, but also you got that man across from you, and you've got that vital time between rounds, and he's giving you information. What's he like in that situation?
I tell you this, got another story for you. My first big fight was Eliseo Castillo on ESPN. First time in my career, I was knocked down twice in the first round. And I made it out that round, and I got to the corner, and he looked at me. He said, "Very good round. Way to hold. That was an excellent round. But what I want you to do now is go back out there and work behind that jab." He said, "Keep your right hand in place and work behind the jab." And I looked at him like he was crazy. I said, "That was a good round. What do you mean?" I'm thinking in my head, "What do you mean that was a good round?" I said, "I was dropped." I said, "I'm hurt. Like, I'm still shaking up." I said, "What do you mean that was a good round?" But his calmness allowed me to be calm. And when I went out there and did exactly what he said, and I kept doing it round after round, I ended up winning the fight. So instead of being knocked down twice in the first round, almost ended everything. I came back to knock the dude out, and That's just a part of his legacy, man. This dude, he knows when to be ecstatic and all that. He know when to be calm. He just knew everything he needed to do exactly when he needed to do it. And to me, that's an extra special situation. That's an extra special person.
You mentioned there his calmness between rounds. Was he the same? Was he just as calm in the gym?
Um, it like again, it depends on the scenario. Because if you remember, in between rounds when Lennox was fighting Tyson, he wasn't calm. He wasn't calm at all. You know, it's just it all depends on the fighter and the scenario. Nothing is the same from fighter to fighter. Everyone can give you similar stories, but they are different depending on who the fighter, because he's not giving every fighter the exact same thing. He assesses who the guy is, and he gives them according to the best that they're able to do. So it's completely different from even in the gym. If guys in there, I remember him being in the gym, and he was looking at the amateurs, and he stopped them from. He said, "Listen, everybody hitting each other." He said, "What is wrong with y'all? Nobody got no defense. Can't nobody move their head out the way." He said, "This ain't rock'em sock'em robots." He said, "You all got to show some type of defense along with your offense. If everybody punching each other, everybody getting caught, somebody ain't got no defense." You know, so it's just a matter of he was always willing to teach, and he told me himself that he think what got him to where he was at is that he always is willing to learn something. He said he don't walk into no fighter thinking he know more than the fighter. He said he's always willing to learn. He said, and that's what always allowed him to be in basically in the world on the stay on the world championship level.
You mentioned a moment ago there he would assess every situation differently into how it needs to be dealt with accordingly. How important is that for you as a fighter, for your trainer to be like that? But also, you know yourself now as a trainer. Do you now realize how potentially difficult that is to do?
Oh my goodness. Like it is super difficult, man. It's super difficult to do in a sense of you depending on someone else to do what you said and to follow your instructions. You know, but at the same time, it's easy to do because the way he taught and the way he did things when he first started camp, he is some certain things he said, night of the fight, certain things he said. His language pretty much don't change. And those things resonate to a fighter because no matter if you hurt, no matter if you're not hurt, you always remember everything that was said in camp. And those things are being repeated to you in the corner or during the fight. So it's actually a little bit easier to not only just remember it, to just do what you was sent here to do.
From going off the back of that, where you're saying how difficult it is to do that, obviously you're in that situation now as a trainer. You knew how good Emmanuel was back then when you was fighting and under his tutelage. Did Emmanuel's, let's say his reputation or Emmanuel's sort of character to yourself and what he meant to you, did that only get greater when you started being a trainer yourself and with hindsight?
It didn't get greater because I looked at him as Mount Rushmore, and I never looked at him for anything less than that. You know, so the love only grew stronger for him because as I moved in with him in his house when I was 17, and I was able to travel around the world with him, and we had a really close relationship, and I remember a lot of times after HBO, after he done, he'd call me, ask me what my thoughts about the fight. A lot of times, 2 o'clock in the morning, he'll call me. He got some things he thinking about and want to know. That's why I was able to not only be around him, but I got to know him so well because we had a lot of conversation and we traveled a lot of places together. So he was always, when I met him, I looked up to him like Mount Rushmore, and to this day I still look the same. Only thing that changed is just the love for him grew, because I got to know the individual instead of the man on TV.
It brings me into my next point. Very nicely there. Emmanuel, away from the sport, away from boxing, I've heard he's a man who loved his barbecues. He loved his socializing. He'd have the fighters live in his house with him as well. Talk to me about that side of Emmanuel.
He loved to cook, man. This dude would go to the meat market and get all these ribs, prep them, and he have a barbecue. And about 20 minutes later, he on the grill. You see the grill, and next thing you know, it's cars all down the street. It's like, cause people coming over for Emmanuel's barbecue. So it was always a good situation when he was in there cooking. It was great, man. I was very fortunate to have these memories and stories about him in the kitchen cooking breakfast. All right, JB, come on down, breakfast ready. You know, to have that type of person cook breakfast for me, like, to me, that was insane. Still to this day, as I think about it, man, like, I look at a lot of people do different things about say different things about the things he accomplished in the sport. And I just look at the pictures and, like, I can't believe he cooked me breakfast. It was an everyday thing, he cooked me breakfast. And it was, for me, it was always an amazing experience every day. A lot of people say, and make sure, a lot of people regret not embracing the day that they spent time with this person, that person. I embrace every day. Every second I was with them, I embraced every day and every second. So it was awesome for me.
A lot of people say people are the life and soul of a party. Is that how you would describe Emmanuel?
He was the party. Like, he was the guy. I remember, I knew his impacts, but it came all into fruition one year. This may have been 2005, 2006. He was doing the HBO thing, and it was in LA at the Staples Center. We all was together, and Tommy was there with us. Tommy traveled with us because I think we were supposed to go somewhere for a fight or something. And Emanuel Steward and Tommy Hearns walked in the Staples Center. We walked in, not on the bottom floor where the VIPs, walked in the top where regular fans walk in. So we was to go down to the floor. And by the time we hit the fourth step, people started recognizing who was coming down. And the whole place, it seemed like it filled with electricity. Everybody got up, yelling, clapping. Wanted to. It was an amazing response that these two got, just walking down the steps in the Staples Center, going to the main floor. I mean, to me, it just was amazing. And I was just smiling looking at it, because is you could see the impact that they had on people and all around the world. And we've been to different places, different countries, and they got the exact same response.
You mentioned there the impact that Emmanuel had on people. You said yourself, to you, he was the Mount Rushmore. You embraced every moment you had with him. And I'm sure there was a gym full of people who felt the same way. How did Emmanuel deal with that?
I mean, believe it or not, he dealt with it like anybody, any special person could. He appreciated it, but he knew he had a job to do, and he did his job. It never got to him. There's the only person of that status that I could recall never getting the big head about anything. It I never seen it. Never getting too what I guess overconfident or something like that. He was always he was confident. Don't get me wrong. You couldn't tell him what he couldn't do and think that that's just gonna be it. He was super confident, definitely. But he had a lot of humbleness to him as well.
Next question. I don't want to go over this too much or in too depth, but we mentioned the impact he had on people. When Emmanuel passed, did you see just how much impact he had on people from the reaction?
I mean, I did, but at the same time, it was kind of in a different way because when he passed, it was we were always together, meaning me, Vladimir, and Sugar Hill Steward. We all was together, and because I was training Vladimir for the first time, I was training a fighter for the first time ever, and I was getting ready for a fight, so I was with Sugar Hill. So me and Sugar Hill spent a lot of those moments together throughout the whole day. And we didn't say too much to each other. We was just in each other's company because we knew what happened. And eventually, I was able to see how he meant to the world in the sense of I was in Germany and these people was going crazy about Emanuel Steward. I'm coming back to Detroit and the funeral was insane. It was so many champions there. So many people came that it was, for me, it was amazing, so, and still to this day, you can see a lot of his impact.
Absolutely. Talk to me about, you mentioned a couple of stories already. So what's your favourite story of your time with Emmanuel?
Just being with him. That's it. I mean, either we driving in the car and I'm taking him somewhere, because a lot of times he be on the phone too much. I'm like, man, you listen, please let me drive. You on the phone, you taking 10 phone calls every 5 minutes. He said, okay, I'm getting out, go on and drive. Because he's an independent guy. A very, very, very self-efficient man. So he don't want to think that he can't drive and do that at the same time. But a lot of times you just got to, like, if you know him well enough and he know you well enough, a lot of times you just got to take over. Like, okay, man, you sit in the passenger side and let me drive. And those days is always edged in my mind because we spent the most time together, and some of the craziest stories, he'd wake me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and say, "Listen, I got a flight to leave at 6 o'clock. I need to go to the airport." I'm like, "Oh snap!" I'm like, it's 4 o'clock. Why wake me up? Why just wake me up now?" And he doesn't think about it. He don't come out to the car until almost 5 o'clock. And I'm like, dude, man, like, what are you doing? I'm thinking to myself, like, what are you doing in there? Like, we got to go. You're going to miss this flight. So he said, okay, buddy, we got to go. I said, yes, I know. So I take off to the airport. I mean, I am speeding. I'm running lights. I'm doing everything. I'm breaking every speed limit. And I get him to the airport. He said, okay, got me here on time again. Okay, thanks a lot. I see you in a couple of days. And those are classics for him. Always barely making the flight sometimes and just rushing to the airport. So, but like, it was amazing times for me, So those like a lot of stories that I just stick to and I remember and that I always play back in my head are personal ones. The ones that it was just me and him going somewhere, doing something, he in the rush. He wanted to get behind the wheel and drive. I'm like, no, you gotta let me drive. I know you're in a hurry. You got too many phone calls, too many people calling you. So it was always an amazing time.
Absolutely. And just finally, Jonathan, you mentioned he's your Mount Rushmore. Do you think his legacy will ever not be forgotten, but do you think it'll ever be matched?
I mean, that's really difficult to say because you got you got guys that's 5 years old that may be thinking about being a trainer one day. So that's really difficult to say. But I think the most difficult part about Emmanuel, that in my opinion, that won't be matched in our lifetime is the legacy that he created in Detroit in that gym. The legacy that was heard around the world about that gym. And it was only a city rec center. That's what people don't realize. It was a city rec center, and he took what they did in that basement, and it was echoed throughout the entire world. And that will forever be a milestone that, I mean, you will have other gyms having world champions, maybe multiple world champions, but to have a Emanuel Steward at that gym, not bringing in world champions, but creating homegrown world champions. That was the difficult part. The most difficult part is taking guys off the street from kid amateurs to grown men as pros, allowing them, making them world champions over and over and over again, and not taking someone that's already polished and turning them world champion once and never doing it again. You know, I just think that what he did was so significant that I just don't see our lifetime someone else eclipsing that. Could it happen? I'm sure it will, because you got great people born every day. You know, so I'm not gonna say that it won't happen again, but I don't think we'll see it. I don't think we'll live long enough to see it.
Also, over there in Detroit, got guys like John Pack, and they're still keeping the Kronk name going. You've got the Emanuel Steward Championship tomorrow, amateur program is still going. Just how important is that?
I just think it's important for the city. Not only for the city. I think an amateur program is what Emanuel he always talked about amateur program. I think an amateur program is important for any city, especially the inner city kids with not too much to do, nowhere to go. And most of these kids got violence on their mind because that's all they see out their doors. You know, somehow you can orchestrate that into a boxing lesson and teach them different responsibilities about life. I just think is incredible, and what John Lee Pegg is doing, I think is awesome.
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan, I want to thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for your stories and sharing them with us.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you.